The grand courthouse of Millbrook Heights stood like a sentinel against the morning sun, its weathered limestone facade a testament to decades of justice served. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. But today, the usual decorum of Courtroom 7 had been shattered by an electricity in the air so palpable it seemed to crackle between the ornate wooden panels. Even Judge Eleanor Montgomery, known for her unflappable demeanor during 30 years on the bench, found herself leaning forward, her wire-rimmed glasses unable to mask her astonishment at what had just transpired before her. This was no ordinary day in the justice system, and the service dog's unexpected reaction had brought the entire proceedings to a stunned halt. The tension in the courtroom was a living thing, wrapping around each person present as they watched. 8-year-old Sophie Martinez clutched the leather handle of her German Shepherd's harness. Shadow, with his jet-black coat gleaming under the fluorescent lights, stood rigid and alert, his previous gentle demeanor transformed into something entirely different after Sophie's subtle hand signal. The change in the dog's behavior had been so dramatic, so precise, that Judge Montgomery had no choice but to stop the proceedings immediately. The marble halls outside echoed with whispers as court officers hurried to maintain order. This was unprecedented in Millbrook Heights, a city where the most exciting legal disputes typically involved property lines and parking violations. But today's case had drawn spectators from 3 counties away, all cramming into the wooden benches, their collective breath held as they waited to see what would happen next. Sophie's small frame seemed even tinier against the imposing backdrop of the witness stand, her dark curls falling around a face that held wisdom far beyond her. Years. Her fingers, still wrapped around Shadow's harness, showed white at the knuckles, the only visible sign of her inner turmoil. The service dog's presence beside her was both a comfort and a weapon, though none in the courtroom yet understood just how powerful that combination would prove to be. District Attorney Sarah Chen stood frozen mid-objection, her usual composed demeanor cracking as she processed what she had just witnessed. The defense attorney James Sullivan had gone pale, his client shifting uncomfortably beside him. In the gallery, Sophie's grandmother, Eleanor Martinez, pressed her hand to her mouth, tears gathering in her eyes as she watched the scene unfold. The story of how Sophie and Shadow had ended up in this courtroom was extraordinary enough. But what had just happened when Sophie gave that subtle signal to her dog was about to change everything. The truth that had been buried beneath layers of lies and deception was about to emerge, all because of a little girl's trust in her 4-legged guardian and a bond that transcended ordinary understanding. Judge Montgomery removed her glasses, slowly, polishing them with deliberate care as she gathered her thoughts. In 27 years of presiding over cases in this courtroom, she had never seen anything quite like this. As she replaced her glasses, her gaze swept over the assembled crowd, lingering on Sophie and Shadow before settling on the defendant's table. The next few moments would alter the course of justice in ways none of them could have predicted. The tension mounted as Shadow maintained his position, his attention unwavering. The dog's behavior wasn't just a reaction, it was a revelation, and every person in that courtroom knew they were witnessing something unprecedented. Sophie's small hand moved again, almost imperceptibly, and what happened next would be talked about in Millbrook Heights for years to come. This wasn't just about a dog's remarkable training or a child's courage. This was about truth finding its way to the light through the most unexpected of partnerships. As the courtroom held its collective breath, the story that had brought them all to this moment began to unfold, a tale of loss, loyalty, and a little girl's unwavering faith in her four-legged protector. The morning had started like any other day in Courtroom 7, with the usual parade of attorneys and clients filing through the heavy oak doors. But as Shadow's paws clicked against the polished floor, leading Sophie to the witness stand, something shifted in the atmosphere. Perhaps it was the unusual sight of a child, witness accompanied by a service dog, or maybe it was the way Shadow's ears had pricked forward the moment they entered, his training evident in every controlled movement. The case itself had already captured the community's attention, but no one could have predicted how a simple hand signal from an 8-year-old girl would transform a routine testimony into something that would challenge everything they thought. They knew about justice, truth, and the extraordinary bonds between humans and animals. In the gallery, reporters from local papers scribbled frantically in their notebooks, knowing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Court stenographer Martha Wells found her fingers hovering over her keyboard, momentarily forgetting her duty to record as she watched the scene unfold. Even the most seasoned legal professionals present felt the weight of the moment, understanding that what happened next would be remembered long after the verdict was delivered. The morning sun continued its climb, sending shafts of light through the tall windows, creating halos around Sophie and Shadow as they waited for Judge Montgomery's next words. The story of how they had reached this moment and what would happen next would change not only their lives, but the very way their community understood justice and truth. The story of how Sophie and Shadow found each other began 3 years earlier on a rain-soaked evening that had changed everything. Sophie's parents, both dedicated emergency room doctors at Millbrook General Hospital, were working a late shift during a devastating storm that had knocked out power to half the city. Their commitment to saving lives had always been an inspiration to their daughter, who dreamed of following in their footsteps. But fate had other plans. As they rushed to the hospital to help with an influx of storm-related injuries, their car hydroplaned on the flooded highway. The accident left Sophie without parents and with injuries that would require months of physical therapy. Her grandmother Eleanor, a retired music teacher, became her guardian, moving from her small apartment into the Martinez family home to help Sophie heal, both physically and emotionally. Sophie's recovery was complicated by severe anxiety and PTSD, making it difficult for her to trust or connect with others. The once vibrant, outgoing child became withdrawn, speaking only when necessary and refusing to leave the house except for essential medical appointments. Traditional therapy helped somewhat, but something was missing, until Dr. Rebecca Chen, a specialist in childhood trauma, suggested an innovative program that paired injured children with specially trained service dogs. That's how Shadow entered their lives. The German Shepherd had his own remarkable story of resilience. Born into a prestigious line of police dogs, Shadow had been injured while still in training, protecting his handler from a falling beam during a search and rescue exercise. The injury had left him with a slight limp that ended his potential career in law enforcement, but his intelligence and protective instincts made him perfect for service work with children. The program that brought Sophie and Shadow together was run by retired K-9 officer Marcus Williams, whose dedication to helping traumatized children had led him to develop unique training methods. Unlike traditional service dog programs, Marcus believed in starting the training process with both dog and child present, allowing them to build trust organically while learning to work as a team. Sophie's first meeting with Shadow was transformative. The moment the big shepherd padded quietly into the training center, his dark eyes found Sophie's, and something clicked. Instead of his usual protocol of gradually approaching new children, Shadow walked directly to Sophie and laid his head in her lap. The gesture brought tears to Elena's eyes. It was the first time since the accident that Sophie hadn't flinched away from physical contact. Marcus watched their interaction with growing excitement. In his 20 years of working with service dogs, he had never seen such an immediate connection. "Some partnerships are meant to be," he told Elena later. "What we're seeing here is extraordinary." He explained how Shadow's own experience with injury and recovery might be contributing to his understanding of Sophie's needs. The training process became a journey of mutual healing. Shadow learned to recognize signs of anxiety in Sophie, providing deep pressure therapy when she became overwhelmed. Sophie, in turn, began to emerge from her shell, focusing on mastering the hand signals and commands that would help Shadow assist her. Marcus developed a special set of signals that only Sophie and Shadow would share, a private language that would later prove crucial in ways none of them could have imagined. Elena watched in amazement as her granddaughter slowly returned to life. With Shadow by her side, Sophie began venturing outside again, first just to the backyard, then to short walks around the neighborhood. The shepherd's presence gave her confidence, and his unwavering loyalty helped her trust again. When nightmares plagued her sleep, Shadow was there, his solid presence chasing away the darkness. Their partnership deepened through daily training sessions. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Marcus taught them advanced techniques, how Shadow could create space in crowded areas, how to navigate public transportation, and most importantly, how to communicate silently through subtle gestures. "Your bond is your strength," Marcus would say, watching Sophie practice the specialized hand signals. "Trust it." The transformation wasn't just in Sophie's confidence. Shadow seemed to have found his true purpose, his earlier injury forgotten in his dedication to his young partner. The shepherd's protective instincts, too strong for regular police work, were perfectly suited to watching over Sophie. He learned to anticipate her needs, often moving to support her before she even realized she needed help. Their training incorporated unique elements that Marcus had never tried before. Recognizing Sophie's interest in medicine, inherited from her parents, he taught Shadow to retrieve specific items from her medical kit, to activate emergency call buttons, and to perform deep pressure therapy with precise timing. The shepherd learned to distinguish between different types of anxiety responses, adapting his support accordingly. Elena supported their training by converting part of the house into a practice area. She installed special equipment recommended by Marcus, creating safe spaces where Sophie and Shadow could work on their skills. The garage became a simulation room where they could practice handling different environments and situations. Elena's dedication to their partnership touched Marcus deeply. He had never seen a family so committed to the success of the program. As months passed, Sophie and Shadow's partnership attracted attention from medical professionals, studying the impact of service dogs on childhood trauma recovery. Dr. Chen documented their progress, noting how Sophie's anxiety levels decreased significantly when working with Shadow. The shepherd's ability to interrupt anxiety attacks before they escalated was particularly remarkable. Their success inspired Marcus to expand his program. He began working with more injured police dogs, rehabilitating them for service work with traumatized children. Sophie and Shadow became ambassadors for the program, their story encouraging other families to consider service dog partnerships. Even Elena found herself becoming an advocate, speaking at community events about the transformative power of these special bonds. The breakthrough moment came during a routine medical checkup. Sophie, who had previously required sedation for any medical procedure, managed to remain calm, with Shadow providing pressure therapy throughout the examination. The medical staff was amazed, and Dr. Chen documented the visit as a significant milestone in Sophie's recovery. But life had more challenges in store for Sophie and Shadow. Their journey would take an unexpected turn when they discovered something that would lead them to that fateful day in Courtroom 7. The bond they had forged through months of training and trust building would be tested in ways none of them could have anticipated, proving that sometimes the strongest partnerships are formed through adversity. Marcus had always said that service dogs chose their partners as much as partners chose them. Watching Sophie and Shadow work together, it was clear they had been meant to find each other. Their partnership wasn't just about service dog tasks. It was about two souls healing together, finding strength in each other's challenges and courage in each other's resilience. As Sophie grew stronger, she began sharing her story with other children in the program. Her experiences helped new participants understand what was possible with dedication and trust. Shadow, too, seemed to take on a mentoring role with new service dogs in training, displaying a patience and gentleness that amazed even Marcus. Elena watched her granddaughter blossom, seeing glimpses of the bright, engaging child she had been before the accident. With Shadow's help, Sophie was not just surviving, she was thriving, discovering new strengths and abilities she never knew she possessed. The partnership had given her more than just support, it had given her purpose. Their story might have remained simply one of healing and hope, but fate had other plans. The events that would lead them to that dramatic moment in Courtroom 7 were about to unfold, testing everything they had learned together and revealing the true depth of their extraordinary bond. What happened next would not only change their lives, but would also challenge the community's understanding of justice, truth, and the remarkable capacity of the human-animal bond to reveal what words cannot express. The foundation of trust and communication they had built would prove to be more important than anyone could have imagined, leading to a moment that would leave an entire courtroom in stunned silence and a judge reaching for her gavel in disbelief. Their journey was far from over, but the strength they had found in each other would light the way forward, proving that sometimes the most powerful voices are the ones that speak without words. Spring brought new challenges and opportunities for Sophie and Shadow's training. Marcus had developed an advanced program specifically tailored to their unique bond, incorporating elements he'd never tried before with other partnerships. The training facility, situated on the outskirts of Millbrook Heights, became their second home, its sprawling grounds offering various environments to test and strengthen their capabilities. Each morning began with precision exercises where Sophie practiced the intricate hand signals that would become crucial to their communication. Marcus had designed a system far more sophisticated than standard service dog commands, a silent language that incorporated subtle finger movements, barely noticeable to observers but crystal clear to Shadow's watchful eyes. They worked tirelessly. On these signals, understanding that clear communication could make all the difference in critical moments. The training scenarios grew increasingly complex. Marcus constructed elaborate simulations that tested not just Shadow's responses, but Sophie's ability to remain calm under pressure. They practiced in crowded spaces, with unexpected noises, and in challenging weather conditions. Shadow learned to distinguish between different types of threats, his responses calibrated to the specific situation. When Sophie showed signs of anxiety, he would press against her leg, a gentle reminder of his constant presence. Elena often watched these sessions from the observation area, marveling at her granddaughter's transformation. Sophie's confidence grew with each successful exercise, her voice becoming stronger, her smile appearing more frequently. The frightened child who had once hidden from the world was emerging as a capable young leader, guided by her four-legged partner's unwavering support. One particular exercise became their specialty, what Marcus called truth detection training. Shadow's extraordinary sensitivity to human behavior, combined with his protective instincts, made him especially adept at recognizing deception. Marcus worked with them to refine this ability, teaching Shadow to respond to subtle changes in body language and vocal patterns that might indicate dishonesty. The breakthrough came during a seemingly routine training session. Marcus had invited volunteers to participate in a series of controlled scenarios, each person given a script to follow. Some were instructed to tell the truth, others to deceive. Without any prompting, Shadow began displaying distinct behaviors. When encountering those who were being dishonest, a slight shift in posture, a focused intensity in his gaze. Sophie learned to read these subtle cues, her bond with Shadow allowing her to understand his silent communications. Together, they achieved an accuracy rate that astounded even Marcus. "This isn't just training anymore," he noted in his logs. "This is something extraordinary, a partnership that transcends our usual understanding of service dog capabilities." Their training expanded to include emergency response scenarios. Shadow learned to locate specific items in Sophie's medical kit, to activate emergency alerts, and to create safe spaces in crowded environments. They practiced evacuation procedures, with Shadow guiding Sophie through complicated routes while maintaining constant awareness of their surroundings. Dr. Chen continued to document their progress, particularly interested in how their partnership was developing beyond traditional service dog parameters. She noted how Shadow's responses had become increasingly nuanced, adapting to subtle changes in Sophie's emotional state that even trained professionals might miss. The shepherd's ability to anticipate needs and respond appropriately was setting new standards in the field. Marcus introduced them to water rescue training, an unusual addition for a service dog team. Shadow's natural swimming ability, combined with his protective instincts, made him exceptional at water safety. Sophie, initially hesitant around water since the accident, found her confidence returning as they practiced rescue scenarios in the facility's training pool. Their weekend sessions often included wilderness navigation. Shadow learned to guide Sophie through difficult terrain, choosing safe paths and indicating potential hazards. These exercises strengthened their trust while providing practical skills that would prove valuable in unexpected ways. Eleanor packed lunches for these extended training days, turning them into adventures that helped Sophie reconnect with the outdoors she had once loved. The training facility became a hub for their expanding community involvement. Other families began visiting to observe their sessions, hoping to understand how service dog partnerships could help their own children. Sophie, once so withdrawn, found herself naturally stepping into the role of mentor, sharing her experiences with other children facing similar challenges. Marcus developed specialized night training sessions, teaching Shadow to be especially alert during darkness, when Sophie's anxiety often peaked. The shepherd learned to perform his duties in low-light conditions, his other senses compensating for limited visibility. These sessions proved particularly challenging, but strengthened their bond in unique ways. Their training incorporated elements of search and rescue techniques adapted for their specific needs. Shadow learned to track scents, to indicate when he detected something unusual, and to alert Sophie to potential dangers in their environment. These skills were integrated with their existing communication system, creating a comprehensive approach to safety and support. Elena watched their progress with growing pride, documenting their achievements in a journal she had started the day Shadow came into their lives. She recorded not just the major milestones, but the small victories too. The first time Sophie laughed during training, the morning Shadow anticipated a panic attack before it began. The day they successfully navigated a crowded shopping mall together. The training facility installed special equipment to help them practice different scenarios. They worked with various surfaces, obstacles, and environmental conditions. Shadow learned to guide Sophie safely through challenging situations while maintaining his protective stance. Their teamwork became so seamless that observers often commented on how they seemed to move as one. Marcus introduced them to advanced mobility support training. Although Sophie's physical injuries had largely healed, Shadow learned techniques to provide stability and support when needed. These skills proved valuable during long training sessions or when Sophie's energy flagged, demonstrating the shepherd's versatility as a service partner. Their communication system evolved to include emergency signals, specific gestures that would trigger immediate responses from Shadow. These were designed for situations where verbal commands might not be possible or appropriate. The shepherd's ability to interpret and respond to these signals with precision became legendary among the training staff. Weather-specific training became part of their routine. They worked in rain, wind, and extreme temperatures, ensuring Shadow could perform his duties effectively in any condition. The shepherd's dedication never wavered, his focus remaining sharp, whether they were practicing in summer heat or winter cold. The facility's obstacle course became their favorite training ground. Shadow learned to guide Sophie safely through various challenges, their teamwork improving with each run. They set facility records for completion times while maintaining perfect safety scores, a testament to their exceptional partnership. As their skills advanced, Marcus began incorporating more complex psychological elements into their training. Shadow learned to distinguish between different types of emotional responses, his reactions calibrated to provide appropriate support for each situation. This emotional intelligence would prove crucial in ways none of them could have anticipated. Their training days often ended with quiet reflection sessions, where Sophie and Shadow would practice their silent communication while Elena and Marcus observed. These peaceful moments reinforced their bond while allowing them to process the day's challenges and achievements. It was during one of these sessions that Marcus first noticed Shadow's extraordinary reaction to deception, a discovery that would later prove significant. The spring training culminated in a comprehensive evaluation that tested everything they had learned. Sophie and Shadow performed flawlessly, demonstrating levels of communication and cooperation that exceeded all expectations. Their success set new standards for the program, inspiring Marcus to expand his training methods to help more partnerships achieve similar results. As summer approached, none of them could have known how crucial this intensive training would become. The skills they had practiced so diligently, the silent language they had perfected, and the trust they had built would soon be tested in ways they never expected. Their journey from the training facility to Courtroom 7 would prove that sometimes the most important lessons are learned not in formal sessions, but in the quiet moments of unwavering loyalty and trust. The incident that would ultimately lead Sophie and Shadow to the courtroom occurred on a quiet Tuesday evening in late summer. The Millbrook Heights Community Center, a newly renovated Victorian mansion, hosted its weekly support group for children coping with trauma. Sophie, who had recently begun sharing her story with others, attended these sessions with Shadow, inspiring other children with their journey of healing and hope. That particular evening, the center's director, Victoria Blackwood, had invited a guest speaker, Thomas Reeves, a prominent child psychologist known for his innovative therapy methods. His reputation preceded him, having published several acclaimed books about childhood trauma recovery. The children and their families had gathered in the center's main hall, its high ceilings and restored woodwork creating an atmosphere of warmth and security. Shadow, usually calm and relaxed during these meetings, showed subtle signs of unease from the moment Dr. Reeves entered the room. His ears twitched forward, and his posture became more alert, changes so slight that only Sophie noticed them. Years of training had taught her to trust Shadow's instincts, but in a room full of people focused on the guest speaker, she kept her observations to herself. The session began normally enough. Dr. Reeves spoke eloquently about healing and recovery, sharing stories of children who had overcome tremendous obstacles. Yet Shadow's behavior grew increasingly pronounced. He shifted his position, placing himself between Sophie and the speaker's podium, his movements careful but deliberate. Sophie felt the tension in his leash, recognizing the pattern they had practiced countless times during their training sessions with Marcus. As the evening progressed, Dr. Reeves announced an exciting opportunity, a new therapeutic program he was launching, specifically designed for children with trauma. He described state-of-the-art facilities, specialized treatment methods, and remarkable success rates. Parents in the audience leaned forward, hope evident in their expressions as he detailed how his program could help their children. Sophie, absently stroking Shadow's fur, noticed something odd about the speaker's presentation. The photographs of his facility seemed somehow familiar, though she couldn't quite place them. Shadow's ears flattened slightly, another subtle signal they had developed during their truth detection training. The shepherd's behavior triggered Sophie's own carefully honed observation skills that had grown sharper through their partnership. During the question and answer session, Shadow's reaction intensified. When Dr. Reeves described his program's success rates, the shepherd let out a low, almost inaudible whine, a sound Sophie had only heard during their specialized training sessions with Marcus. It was Shadow's way of alerting her to potential deception, a signal they had refined through countless hours of practice. Victoria Blackwood, standing at the back of the room, noticed Shadow's unusual behavior. Having worked with service dogs before, she recognized that something was amiss. She watched as Sophie used the hand signals they had practiced so diligently, asking Shadow to maintain his calm while remaining alert. The shepherd responded perfectly, his training evident in every controlled movement. As Dr. Reeves concluded his presentation, he began distributing enrollment forms, for his program. The forms requested detailed personal information and significant upfront payments to secure spots in the supposedly limited program. Shadow's reaction became more pronounced, his body stiffening, his gaze locked on the speaker with an intensity that Sophie had only seen during their most serious training exercises. Elena, sitting beside Sophie, noticed her granddaughter's concerned expression. Years of watching them work together had taught her to trust their silent communications. She observed as Sophie used another series of subtle hand signals, asking Shadow to evaluate the situation more thoroughly. The shepherd's response confirmed what Sophie had begun to suspect. Something about Dr. Reeves and his program wasn't right. While other parents eagerly filled out forms and wrote checks, Sophie used her phone to quietly research some of the claims Dr. Reeves had made. Shadow maintained his protective stance, his body language communicating a clear message to anyone trained to read it. The shepherd's behavior, combined with Sophie's growing suspicions, prompted Eleanor to discreetly alert Victoria about their concerns. As the evening wound down, Dr. Reeves collected completed forms and payments, promising to contact families within the week to begin the enrollment process. Shadow's agitation reached a new level when the speaker began packing his materials. The shepherd's training kicked in fully. He moved to block Sophie's path when she started to leave, a clear indication that he perceived a threat that needed to be addressed. Victoria, having received similar concerns from other sources, attempted to verify Dr. Reeves's credentials during a brief break. Her preliminary checks revealed disturbing inconsistencies. The photographs of his facility matched existing treatment centers in other states. His professional history couldn't be verified, and the contact information he provided led nowhere. Shadow's behavior had not only prevented Sophie from dismissing her doubts, but had also given Victoria the crucial time she needed to uncover the deception. The shepherd's trained responses, combined with Sophie's trust in their partnership, had potentially saved dozens of families from falling victim to an elaborate scam. The situation escalated when Victoria confronted Dr. Reeves about the discrepancies. His reaction, a sudden change in demeanor and an attempt to quickly leave with the collected payments, confirmed their suspicions. Shadow, sensing the heightened tension, positioned himself strategically, using the techniques they had practiced for crowd control and threat assessment. Security was called, but Dr. Reeves managed to slip away in the confusion, leaving behind his presentation materials, but taking the forms and payments with him. The incident left the community shaken, but it had also demonstrated the extraordinary capabilities of a well-trained service dog partnership. Shadow's ability to detect deception, combined with Sophie's trust in their training, had brought the scheme to light before it could fully unfold. In the aftermath, as police began their investigation, Sophie and Shadow's role became increasingly significant. Their training in detecting deceptive behavior, originally developed to help Sophie feel secure, had evolved into something far more valuable. The incident would eventually lead them to that decisive moment in Courtroom 7, but first they would find themselves at the center of an investigation that would test every aspect of their training and trust. The community center incident marked a turning point in their journey. What had started as a partnership focused on Sophie's personal recovery had grown into something that could protect and serve others. Their story began spreading through Millbrook Heights, reaching the ears of law enforcement officials who recognized the potential value of their unique capabilities. As the investigation into Dr. Reeves's activities deepened, Sophie and Shadow's Tuesday evening observation would prove to be just the beginning. Their journey from a healing partnership to key witnesses in a complex legal case was about to begin, leading them toward that extraordinary moment when a simple hand signal in Courtroom 7 would change everything. The events of that summer evening had demonstrated that sometimes the most powerful protectors come in unexpected forms, and that the bond between a girl and her service dog could reach far beyond personal healing to serve a greater purpose. Their training, their trust, and their unwavering connection were about to be tested in ways they never imagined, proving that true partnerships can transform not just individual lives, but entire communities. The investigation into Dr. Thomas Reeves's activities began quietly but intensified rapidly in the weeks following the community center incident. Detective Sarah Morgan, a seasoned investigator specializing in fraud cases, recognized something unique in Sophie and Shadow's role in exposing the scheme. She arranged to meet them at the police station, transforming the typically austere interview room into a more welcoming space for a young witness and her service dog. Detective Morgan had prepared thoroughly, consulting with Marcus about Shadow's training and capabilities. The interview room was equipped with hidden cameras to document Shadow's reactions, testing a theory that the shepherd's trained responses could provide valuable insights during witness interviews. Sophie, sitting calmly with Shadow at her feet, recounted the events of that evening with remarkable clarity, her hand resting reassuringly on Shadow's fur. As they reviewed photographs of potential suspects, Shadow's behavior provided unexpected assistance. When shown an image of Dr. Reeves using a different name at another community center, the shepherd's posture changed subtly, the same alert stance he had displayed during the incident. Detective Morgan, fascinated by this response, began incorporating Shadow's reactions into her investigation strategy. The investigation expanded beyond Millbrook Heights as other communities reported similar schemes. Shadow's reactions to various pieces of evidence helped investigators connect seemingly unrelated cases. The shepherd's ability to recognize the same individual across different disguises proved remarkably accurate, confirming suspicions that Dr. Reeves was operating under multiple aliases. Victoria Blackwood became a key ally in the investigation, providing security footage from the community center. The cameras had captured Shadow's behavior throughout the evening, offering a timeline of when the shepherd first detected something amiss. Analysis of this footage revealed that Shadow had identified concerning behavior long before anyone else noticed anything suspicious. Elena, witnessing her granddaughter's growing confidence during the investigation, began documenting their experiences. In a new journal, she recorded how Sophie's trauma recovery skills, learned through her partnership with Shadow, now helped her remain calm during lengthy police interviews. Their healing journey had prepared them for this unexpected role in serving justice. Detective Morgan's team discovered a pattern in the suspect's activities. He targeted community centers and support groups, exploiting vulnerable families desperate for help. The evidence mounted: fake credentials, stolen facility photographs, and a trail of financial fraud across 3 states. Shadow's reactions to various documents and photographs helped investigators focus their resources efficiently. The breakthrough came when Sophie remembered something crucial about the community center evening. During their truth detection training, Marcus had taught them that people exhibiting deceptive behavior often displayed subtle physical tells. Sophie recalled noticing Dr. Reeves touching his left ear repeatedly when discussing his program's success rates. exactly when shadows' alerts had been most pronounced. This observation led investigators to review footage from other incidents, discovering the same nervous habit across multiple aliases. Shadows' training in detecting deception had picked up on behavioral patterns that even experienced investigators might have missed. The shepherd's abilities, combined with Sophie's attentive observations, were proving invaluable to the investigation. Marcus joined the investigation as a consultant, helping law enforcement understand the significance of Shadow's trained responses. He explained how their specialized communication system worked, demonstrating how Sophie's subtle hand signals could direct Shadow's attention to specific individuals or behaviors. This insight helped investigators develop new protocols for working with service dogs in fraud cases. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Shadow's reactions led them to discover a hidden connection. During a review of evidence photos, the shepherd showed strong, alerting behavior to images of locations that seemed unrelated to Dr. Reeves's known activities. This prompted deeper investigation, revealing a network of accomplices operating similar schemes across the country. Sophie's role in the investigation expanded beyond witness testimony. Her experience with trauma recovery helped her connect with other victims, particularly children who had been affected by the scheme. With Shadow providing emotional support, she helped these young witnesses feel safe sharing their experiences with investigators. Detective Morgan organized a specialized task force, incorporating Sophie and Shadow's unique capabilities into their investigation strategy. The shepherd's reactions during evidence reviews helped investigators prioritize leads and identify patterns they might have otherwise missed. Sophie's ability to interpret Shadow's alerts added another layer of insight to the investigation. The investigation uncovered a sophisticated operation targeting vulnerable families across multiple jurisdictions. Dr. Reeves, whose real name was Daniel Whitman, had been running similar schemes for years, always staying one step ahead of law enforcement. But he hadn't counted on a highly trained service dog's ability to recognize deceptive behavior patterns. As evidence mounted, Sophie and Shadow's safety became a concern. Detective Morgan arranged for additional security measures at their home, teaching them new protocols for staying safe while participating in the investigation. Shadow's protective training proved especially valuable during this time, his alertness to potential threats helping keep Sophie secure. Elena watched proudly as her granddaughter navigated these challenges with growing confidence. Sophie's trauma recovery journey had given her tools that now helped others heal. Their kitchen table became a hub of activity as Sophie helped organize case files. With Shadow always vigilant beside her, the investigation revealed deeper implications about the vulnerability of support groups and therapy programs to exploitation. Sophie's experience led to the development of new verification protocols for guest speakers and program providers. Her story inspired community centers nationwide to implement stronger security measures. Marcus continued refining their training, incorporating lessons learned from the investigation. Shadow's ability to detect deception became even more precise, and Sophie learned to better articulate what she observed in Shadow's alerts. Their partnership evolved to meet these new challenges while maintaining their core focus on Sophie's well-being. The case grew more complex as financial records revealed the full scope of the fraud. Shadow's reactions during evidence reviews helped investigators track the money trail through various shell companies and false identities. The shepherd's trained responses proved remarkably accurate in identifying documents containing fraudulent information. Victoria Blackwood worked with other community centers to create a network sharing information about potential scams. Sophie and Shadow's story became a case study in how trained service dogs could provide an additional layer of security in vulnerable communities. Their experience sparked discussions about innovative ways to protect at-risk populations. As the investigation progressed, Sophie's resilience inspired others involved in the case. Her journey from trauma survivor to key witness demonstrated the transformative power of purpose and partnership. Shadow's unwavering support showed how service dogs could play unexpected roles in serving justice. The evidence gathered through this careful investigation would eventually lead them to that dramatic moment in Courtroom 7. But first, they would need to prepare for the challenges of testifying in a high-profile fraud case. Their training would be tested in new ways as they worked to ensure justice for all the families affected by the scheme. The investigation had revealed something powerful about healing and purpose. Sometimes helping others navigate through darkness can light the way forward for everyone involved. Sophie and Shadow's partnership had evolved from personal recovery to community service, proving that the strongest bonds are those forged in the service of others. The first day of the trial brought unprecedented attention to the Millbrook Heights courthouse. News vans lined the historic building's perimeter, their satellite dishes reaching toward the morning sky like mechanical sunflowers. Inside Courtroom 7, preparation for Sophie and Shadow's testimony had transformed the usually formal space. Judge Eleanor Montgomery had ordered special accommodations, including a modified witness stand that allowed Shadow to remain close to Sophie while maintaining the court's dignity. District Attorney Sarah Chen had spent weeks preparing Sophie for this moment. They had practiced in the empty courtroom after hours, working with Shadow to ensure he would remain calm despite the heightened emotions of a trial. The Shepherds' training proved invaluable during these sessions, his steady presence helping Sophie maintain her composure as they rehearsed her testimony. Marcus attended these preparation sessions, fine-tuning their silent communication system for the courtroom environment. They developed new signals specifically for trial situations, allowing Sophie to communicate with Shadow without disrupting proceedings. These subtle gestures would become crucial during their testimony, though none of them yet realized just how important they would prove to be. The defense team, led by renowned attorney James Sullivan, had initially objected to Shadow's presence in the courtroom. They argued that a service dog might unfairly influence the jury's sympathies. Judge Montgomery, however, had studied similar cases where service dogs supported young witnesses. Her ruling, allowing Shadow to accompany Sophie, set a precedent for the district, emphasizing the importance of accommodating witnesses with special needs. As spectators filed into the courtroom that morning, Detective Morgan noticed how Shadow positioned himself, creating a protective space around Sophie that kept her calm despite the crowd. The shepherd's training shone through in every measured movement, his focus unwavering as he guided Sophie through the busy hallways and into position near the witness stand. Elena sat in the front row, her heart swelling with pride as she watched her granddaughter prepare to testify. The transformation she had witnessed over the past months, from a traumatized child to a confident young witness, seemed almost miraculous. Shadow's steady presence beside Sophie reminded Elena of how far they had come together. The defendant, Daniel Whitman, formerly known as Dr. Reeves, sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, his demeanor carefully controlled. Yet the moment he entered the courtroom, Shadow's behavior shifted subtly. The shepherd's ears pricked forward, his posture becoming more alert, changes so slight that only Sophie and those familiar with their training would notice. Judge Montgomery began the proceedings with a special instruction to the jury about Shadow's presence. She explained the legal precedent for service dogs supporting witnesses, emphasizing that Shadow was not merely a pet, but a trained professional assisting a witness with special needs. Her words set the tone for what would become a landmark case in many ways. District Attorney Chen's opening statement wove together the complex threads of evidence that had led to this moment. She described the sophisticated fraud scheme that had targeted vulnerable families, emphasizing how Sophie and Shadow's unique partnership had helped uncover the truth. The jury listened intently, their eyes occasionally drawn to the calm shepherd sitting beside the witness stand. As Sophie took the stand for her testimony, Shadow moved with precise grace to his designated position. The modifications to the witness area allowed him to maintain physical contact with Sophie while remaining unobtrusive to the court proceedings. Years of training culminated in this moment, as Shadow settled into his role of silent supporter and protector. Sophie's initial testimony focused on the community center incident. She described how Shadow's behavior had first alerted her to potential deception, explaining the subtle signs she had learned to recognize through their extensive training. The jury seemed captivated by her clear, confident voice, so different from the frightened child she had once been. During cross-examination, Sullivan attempted to undermine Sophie's credibility by questioning her ability to interpret Shadow's behavior accurately. The shepherd remained perfectly still during these challenges, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the attorney's increasingly aggressive questioning. Sophie's responses demonstrated remarkable poise, her trust in Shadow giving her strength to face the difficult questions. The turning point came when Sullivan pressed Sophie about specific details of Whitman's presentation at the community center. As she recounted key moments, Shadow's behavior began to change in subtle but significant ways. His ears shifted forward, his body tensed slightly, the same alerts he had displayed during the original incident. Detective Morgan, watching from her seat behind the prosecution table, recognized the significance of Shadow's reactions. The shepherd's behavior corroborated physical evidence they had gathered, providing silent confirmation of Sophie's testimony. The detective made careful notes, knowing that Shadow's responses could prove crucial to the case's outcome. As the questioning continued, Sullivan made a tactical error. Attempting to rattle Sophie, he produced documents from Whitman's presentation, asking her to verify specific details. Shadow's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. The shepherd's training in detecting deception kicked in, his alerts becoming more pronounced as Sophie examined each fraudulent document. Judge Montgomery observed this interaction with keen interest. In her years on the bench, she had never seen anything quite like the silent communication between Sophie and Shadow. The shepherd's reactions seemed to provide an additional layer of verification to Sophie's testimony, though in ways the court had never encountered before. Victoria Blackwood, testifying later that day, provided context for Shadow's behavior. She explained how the shepherd's alerts during the community center event had prompted her initial investigation into Whitman's credentials. Her testimony helped establish the timeline of events that had led to the discovery of the larger fraud scheme. As the day progressed, Marcus was called as an expert witness to explain Shadow's training and capabilities. He described the sophisticated communication system they had developed, emphasizing how Shadow's reactions to deception were based on observable behavioral changes rather than arbitrary responses. His testimony helped establish the scientific validity of Shadow's alerts. The prosecution's case built steadily, with Sophie and Shadow's evidence providing a crucial foundation. The victims came forward, their stories creating a pattern that supported Sophie's initial observations. Through it all, Shadow remained vigilant, his behavior offering subtle but consistent confirmation of the truth in each testimony. Elena watched the proceedings with growing pride, remembering the long journey that had brought them to this moment. The frightened child, who had once hidden from the world, was now helping to protect others from harm. Shadow's unwavering support had not only helped Sophie heal, but had given her the strength to stand up for justice. As the first day of testimony drew to a close, Judge Montgomery made a note in her private journal about the extraordinary partnership she had witnessed. Shadow's presence in her courtroom had demonstrated something profound about the human animal, bond and its potential to serve justice in unexpected ways. The case was far from over, but already it had changed how many viewed the role of service dogs in legal proceedings. Sophie and Shadow's testimony had laid the groundwork for what would become a landmark case in Millbrook Heights. Their partnership had shown that healing and justice could work hand in hand, that a child's courage, combined with a dog's loyalty, could shine light on hidden truths. As they left the courtroom that evening, their story was far from over. But they had already inspired countless others with their unwavering commitment to truth and justice. The prosecution's case strengthened as new evidence emerged, painting a detailed picture of Whitman's elaborate scheme. Financial records revealed a complex web of fraudulent activities spanning multiple states, with hundreds of families affected. Detective Morgan's team had traced bank transfers, false identities, and shell companies, all leading back to the man who had once presented himself as Dr. Thomas Reeves at the Millbrook Heights Community Center. Sophie's second day of testimony focused on the specific documents Shadow had reacted to during the community center presentation. District Attorney Chen presented a series of exhibits, carefully watching as Shadow's behavior corroborated each piece of evidence. The shepherd's reactions remained consistent, his training evident in the precise way he alerted to materials containing fraudulent information. Expert witnesses from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit took the stand, explaining how Whitman's scheme had evolved over the years. Their testimony revealed that Sophie and Shadow's intervention at the community center had disrupted what would have been his most ambitious operation yet, a nationwide network of fake therapy programs designed to exploit families dealing with childhood trauma. During a crucial moment in the proceedings, Sullivan attempted to introduce new evidence, documents supposedly proving Whitman's legitimate credentials. As the papers were presented to the court, Shadow's behavior changed dramatically. His ears flattened, his posture shifted, and he moved slightly closer to Sophie, the exact pattern of responses they had practiced during their deception detection training. Judge Montgomery, intrigued by Shadow's consistent reactions, permitted an unusual demonstration. Under controlled conditions, the prosecution mixed Whitman's fraudulent documents with legitimate credentials from other mental health professionals. Shadow's alerts remained remarkably accurate, identifying the false documents with a precision that impressed even the most skeptical observers. Dr. Rebecca Chen, the specialist who had first recommended Sophie for the service dog program, provided expert testimony about the scientific basis for Shadow's abilities. She explained how service dogs could be trained to recognize subtle changes in human behavior, scent and body language that often accompanied deception. Her testimony helped establish the validity of Shadow's reactions as supporting evidence. The trial took an unexpected turn when a former associate of Whitman's came forward. Jennifer Torres, who had worked briefly in one of his fake clinics, described how she had become suspicious of his operations. Her testimony corroborated the patterns Shadow had identified, adding human confirmation to the shepherd's alerts. During her emotional testimony, Shadow remained focused and alert, his behavior providing silent validation of her words. As evidence mounted, the defense strategy shifted. Sullivan began suggesting that while some irregularities might exist, in Whitman's practices there was no proof of criminal intent. However, this argument weakened when prosecutors introduced recordings from the community center security cameras, showing Shadow's initial reactions to Whitman's presentation. The shepherd's behavior had been consistent from the very beginning, suggesting a pattern rather than isolated incidents. Victoria Blackwood returned to the stand, presenting new evidence discovered in the community center's records. She had found a series of emails from Whitman, using various aliases, attempting to book speaking engagements at other support groups. In each case, Shadow's reactions to the documents helped investigators connect different identities to the same individual. The prosecution called Marcus back to the stand to explain the significance of Shadow's various alerts. He described how they had developed their communication system, emphasizing that Shadow's reactions were based on observable, behavioral changes rather than subjective interpretations. His testimony helped establish a scientific framework for understanding the shepherd's responses. Detective Morgan presented a comprehensive timeline of the investigation, showing how Shadow's initial alerts had led to the discovery of similar schemes in other communities. The shepherd's ability to recognize patterns of deceptive behavior had helped law enforcement connect cases that might otherwise have remained separate incidents. Elena testified about the changes she had observed in Sophie since partnering with Shadow. Her emotional account of their journey from trauma to triumph moved many in the courtroom to tears. She described how their healing partnership had evolved into something greater, a force for justice that had protected countless other families from exploitation. As the evidence phase of the trial neared its conclusion, the prosecution presented financial experts who detailed the full scope of Whitman's operation. They estimated that his schemes had defrauded families of millions of dollars, often targeting those already struggling with medical bills and therapy costs. Shadow's intervention at the community center had prevented dozens more families from falling victim to the scam. The defense attempted to challenge the admissibility of Shadow's reactions as evidence, but Judge Montgomery cited precedents where animal behavior had been considered relevant to legal proceedings. She noted that while Shadow's alerts alone weren't definitive proof, they formed part of a pattern of evidence that supported the prosecution's case. Sophie's final day of testimony focused on the impact of Whitman's scheme on other families. With Shadow by her side, she described meeting other children who had been affected by the fraud. Her courage in coming forward had inspired many others to share their stories, creating a powerful narrative of community healing and justice. The prosecution's case culminated with a powerful presentation linking all the evidence together. They showed how Sophie and Shadow's initial observation had unraveled a complex criminal enterprise, demonstrating that even the most sophisticated schemes could be exposed through unexpected means. Their partnership had proven that justice could wear many forms, including 4 paws and a wagging tail. Throughout the trial, Shadow's presence had transformed the usually formal atmosphere of Courtroom 7. His quiet dignity and unwavering focus had shown how service dogs could contribute to the legal process in meaningful ways. Judge Montgomery noted in her records that the case might set important precedents for future trials involving service animals. As the prosecution prepared to rest its case, the impact of Sophie and Shadow's testimony was clear. They had not only helped expose a criminal operation, but had also demonstrated the extraordinary possibilities that could emerge from partnerships between humans and animals. Their story had become a testament to the power of trust, training, and unwavering dedication to truth. The evidence they had helped uncover painted a comprehensive picture of Whitman's activities, leaving little doubt about the systematic nature of his fraud. Shadow's consistent alerts, combined with Sophie's clear testimony and the mountain of corroborating evidence, had created a compelling case that would be difficult for any defense to overcome. As the trial moved toward its conclusion, Sophie and Shadow's partnership had already achieved something remarkable. They had shown that healing from trauma could lead to unexpected strength, that the bond between a girl and her service dog could serve justice in profound ways. Their journey from victims to champions of truth had inspired countless others, proving that courage often comes in unexpected forms. The turning point in the trial arrived unexpectedly during the defense's presentation of their case. Sullivan had called a series of expert witnesses attempting to discredit the validity of service dog alerts in legal proceedings. As the latest expert, Dr. Howard Mitchell, took the stand, Shadow's behavior suddenly changed in a way that caught everyone's attention, including Judge Montgomery's. Dr. Mitchell, presented as a leading authority on animal behavior, began testifying about the unreliability of canine responses in non-traditional settings. However, as he spoke, Shadow's posture shifted subtly, the same alert pattern he had shown during Whitman's community center presentation. Sophie, recognizing the familiar signal, carefully made the hand gesture they had practiced thousands of times during their training sessions. The shepherd's response was immediate and unmistakable. He rose slowly to his feet, his attention fixed on Dr. Mitchell with an intensity that drew every eye in the courtroom. District Attorney Chen, who had been preparing to cross-examine the expert, noticed the change and adjusted her strategy accordingly. She requested permission to verify Dr. Mitchell's credentials before proceeding with her questions. Judge Montgomery, having watched Shadow's behavior throughout the trial, granted the request. What followed was a revelation that stunned the courtroom. Under Chen's precise questioning, it emerged that Dr. Mitchell's credentials were as fraudulent as Whitman's. He had never held the positions he claimed, and his supposed research on animal behavior didn't exist. The discovery threw Sullivan's defense strategy into chaos. Shadow's alert had exposed another layer of deception, suggesting that Whitman's network extended further than anyone had suspected. Dr. Mitchell's connection to previous schemes emerged, revealing a pattern of providing false expert testimony in various fraud cases. Detective Morgan, watching from the gallery, immediately began coordinating with colleagues in other jurisdictions. Shadow's intervention had inadvertently exposed a broader criminal enterprise involving fake expert witnesses who helped legitimize fraudulent operations. The shepherd's training in detecting deception had uncovered a conspiracy that might have otherwise gone unnoticed. Elena, sitting in her usual spot in the front row, watched with pride as Sophie maintained her composure. Throughout the dramatic revelation, her granddaughter's trust in Shadow's abilities built through countless hours of training and reinforced by their deep bond, had once again served the cause of justice. Marcus was called back to the stand to explain the significance of Shadow's reaction to Dr. Mitchell. He described how their training had focused on recognizing patterns of deceptive behavior regardless of the source. The shepherd's ability to identify these patterns had proven remarkably consistent, whether dealing with fraudulent documents or false testimony. The prosecution moved quickly to capitalize on this unexpected development. They presented evidence linking Dr. Mitchell to several of Whitman's previous operations, showing how he had helped provide credibility to various schemes. Shadow's alert had broken open an entirely new aspect of the case, demonstrating the sophisticated nature of Whitman's criminal network. Victoria Blackwood provided crucial testimony about similar experts who had spoken at other community centers, establishing a pattern of using false credentials to legitimize fraudulent programs. Her documentation helped investigators identify other potential fake experts who had participated in Whitman's schemes. The defense team's strategy crumbled as more of their expert witnesses withdrew, fearing similar exposure. Sullivan found himself in the difficult position of trying to salvage his case while distancing himself from Dr. Mitchell's deception. The credibility of his remaining witnesses came under intense scrutiny. Judge Montgomery called an emergency conference in her chambers to address the implications of Dr. Mitchell's exposed fraud. The discussion centered not just on the immediate case, but on the broader implications for the judicial system. Shadow's role in uncovering the deception had demonstrated the potential value of properly trained service dogs in legal proceedings. As the trial resumed, Chen presented a revised timeline showing how Dr. Mitchell had participated in multiple fraud schemes across several states. Shadow's alert had provided the crucial first step in unraveling this additional layer of deception, leading investigators to connections they might have otherwise missed. The courtroom dynamics shifted noticeably after this revelation. Jurors paid closer attention to Shadow's behavior, understanding now that his alerts were not merely trained responses, but indicators of genuine deception. The shepherd's consistent accuracy had earned him a unique kind of credibility. Sophie found herself called back to the witness stand to explain exactly what she had observed in Shadow's behavior during Dr. Mitchell's testimony. Her clear, confident description of the shepherd's alerts helped the jury understand how their training had prepared them for this moment. Detective Morgan presented new evidence showing how Dr. Mitchell had helped other criminals establish false credentials. The investigation sparked by Shadow's alert had opened up dozens of other cases, suggesting that the impact of their discovery would extend far beyond this single trial. The prosecution team worked late into the night, incorporating the new evidence into their case. Shadow's exposure of Dr. Mitchell had strengthened their argument about the sophisticated nature of Whitman's operation and the lengths he had gone to protect it. As news of Dr. Mitchell's exposure spread through legal circles, other courts began reviewing cases where he had testified as an expert witness. Shadow's alert had initiated a chain reaction that would ultimately help many other victims of fraud seek justice. The defense's attempt to discredit service dog alerts had backfired spectacularly, instead proving their potential value in detecting deception. Judge Montgomery noted that this case might establish new precedents for how service animals could contribute to legal proceedings. Sophie and Shadow's partnership had once again transformed tragedy into triumph. Their ability to expose deception had grown from protecting one community to serving justice on a much larger scale. Their story continued to inspire others, showing how trust and training could overcome sophisticated criminal schemes. The turning point they had created would have lasting implications for the legal system's approach to service dog evidence. Shadow's consistent accuracy in detecting deception had opened new possibilities for how animals could assist in the pursuit of justice. As the trial moved into its final phase, Sophie and Shadow's role in exposing both Whitman's original scheme and Dr. Mitchell's deception had created an insurmountable challenge for the defense. Their partnership had demonstrated that justice could prevail through unexpected means, guided by the unshakable bond between a girl and her service dog. The resolution of the trial unfolded in a way that would be remembered in Millbrook Heights for generations to come. After Dr. Mitchell's exposure, Whitman's defense began to crumble rapidly. The strain showed clearly on his face as he sat at the defense table, his carefully maintained facade of professional confidence finally showing cracks. Sullivan, still reeling from the revelation about his expert witness, attempted to salvage what remained of their case. In a surprising turn of events, 3 more former associates of Whitman came forward, inspired by Sophie and Shadow's courage. They described an intricate network of fraud that went beyond anything the prosecution had initially suspected. Each testimony seemed to validate Shadow's earlier alerts, proving that the shepherd's instincts had detected a pattern of deception that extended far deeper than anyone had imagined. Judge Montgomery listened intently as the new witnesses detailed their roles in Whitman's operations. One had managed the financial accounts, another had helped create false credentials, and the third had coordinated the network of fake experts like Dr. Mitchell. Their testimonies painted a picture of a criminal enterprise that had preyed on vulnerable families across multiple states for nearly a decade. The most compelling testimony came from Lisa Winters, a former office manager at one of Whitman's fake clinics. She described how she had initially believed in the program, thinking she was helping traumatized children. When she discovered the truth, she had been threatened into silence. Watching Sophie and Shadow in court had given her the courage to finally speak out. During Lisa's testimony, Shadow displayed a new behavior that caught Marcus's attention. Instead of his usual alert stance, the shepherd showed signs of recognition and acceptance, the same response he gave when meeting someone telling the truth during their training sessions. This subtle difference helped validate Lisa's account, adding another layer of credibility to her testimony. Elena watched from her usual seat as the truth about Whitman's operation became clearer with each new witness. She remembered how Shadow had first alerted them to the deception at the community center, amazed at how that single moment had led to the unraveling of such a massive criminal enterprise. Her granddaughter's partnership with Shadow had sparked a chain reaction of justice that continued to grow. Detective Morgan presented updated findings showing how Whitman's scheme had evolved over the years. The financial trails revealed that he had stolen millions from families already struggling with medical bills and therapy costs. Shadow's intervention at the community center had not only prevented dozens of new families from falling victim, but had also exposed the entire operation. Victoria Blackwood testified about changes being implemented at community centers nationwide in response to the case. New verification protocols for speakers and programs were being established, with many centers consulting Marcus about incorporating service dogs into their security measures. Sophie and Shadow's story had inspired a movement to better protect vulnerable populations. The prosecution's closing arguments wove together all the elements of the case, emphasizing how Sophie and Shadow's partnership had been the key to exposing the truth. Chen described how their unique bond, forged through trauma and healing, had evolved into something that served not just their own needs, but the greater good of their community. As Sullivan rose for his closing argument, the strain of recent revelations showed in his demeanor. His defense had been systematically dismantled, leaving him little to work with. Even as he spoke, Shadow's steady gaze seemed to challenge every attempt to minimize Whitman's culpability. The jury's deliberation was remarkably brief. When they filed back into the courtroom, their faces reflected the gravity of their decision. The forewoman stood, her voice clear and unwavering as she read out the verdict, guilty on all counts. Whitman's composed facade finally crumbled as the full weight of his crimes caught up with him. Judge Montgomery's sentencing remarks would be quoted in legal textbooks for years to come. She spoke about the unique nature of the case, the extraordinary partnership between Sophie and Shadow, and the broader implications for the justice system. The sentence she handed down, 25 years without parole, reflected both the severity of Whitman's crimes and the need to protect vulnerable families from similar schemes. But the judge didn't stop there. She also issued a precedent-setting ruling about the admissibility of trained service dog alerts in court proceedings. Her detailed opinion outlined how Shadow's responses, backed by scientific training and consistent accuracy, had contributed to the pursuit of justice in meaningful ways. As the courtroom cleared, Sophie knelt beside Shadow, wrapping her arms around his neck in a tight hug. Their journey had transformed them both, from a traumatized child and an injured police dog candidate into partners in justice who had helped expose a criminal enterprise and protect countless families. The impact of their case rippled through the legal community. Law enforcement agencies began consulting with Marcus about incorporating service dogs into fraud investigations. Training programs were developed to help other service dog teams learn deception detection techniques. Sophie and Shadow's success had opened new possibilities for how animals could assist in protecting vulnerable populations. Elena watched as reporters gathered outside the courthouse, eager to interview the young girl and her remarkable dog, who had helped bring down a criminal enterprise. She remembered the frightened child who had once hidden from the world, amazed at how that same girl now stood confidently before the cameras, Shadow steady at her side. Victoria Blackwood announced the creation of a new program at the community center, named in honor of Sophie and Shadow. The program would provide support for families affected by fraud while also working to prevent future schemes. Their story had inspired a movement to combine healing with protection, showing how personal recovery could lead to positive change for entire communities. Detective Morgan's final report highlighted how the case had changed investigative procedures. Shadow's consistent accuracy in detecting deception had demonstrated the potential for trained service dogs to assist in complex fraud cases. The partnership between Sophie and Shadow had not only solved a crime, but had also pioneered new approaches to protecting vulnerable populations. As they left the courthouse that day, Sophie and Shadow's journey was far from over. Their story had become a beacon of hope, showing how the darkest experiences could lead to unexpected light. They had proved that justice could come in many forms, and that the bond between a girl and her service dog could change not just their own lives, but the lives of countless others. The resolution of their case had demonstrated something profound. about healing and purpose, that sometimes the path to recovery leads to places we never expected, and that the strongest partnerships are those forged in service to others. Sophie and Shadow had shown that courage comes in many forms, and that truth, when guided by unwavering loyalty and trust, will always find its way to light. The months following the trial brought unexpected recognition and opportunities for Sophie and Shadow. Their story captured national attention, inspiring media coverage that focused not just on their role in exposing Whitman's criminal enterprise, but on the transformative power of the human-animal bond. Major news networks aired special features about their journey, highlighting how their partnership had evolved from personal healing to serving justice. The American Service Dog Association invited Sophie and Shadow to be keynote speakers at their annual conference. Standing before an audience of trainers, handlers, and advocates, Sophie shared their story with remarkable poise. Shadow, ever vigilant beside her, demonstrated some of their specialized communication signals, showing how their training had adapted to meet unprecedented challenges. Universities began studying their case, with researchers from veterinary and psychology departments examining the unique aspects of their partnership. Dr. Rebecca Chen collaborated with Marcus to develop new protocols for training service dogs in deception detection, creating a program that would help other teams develop similar capabilities. The Millbrook Heights Community Center underwent a complete transformation, thanks to an anonymous donor inspired by Sophie and Shadow's story. The renovation included a state-of-the-art training facility where Marcus could work with new service dog teams. The donor's only requirement was that the facility be named the Shadow Center for Healing Partnerships. Law enforcement agencies across the country started incorporating elements of Shadow's training into their K9 programs. Detective Morgan worked with Marcus to create specialized workshops, teaching handlers how to recognize and develop their dog's natural ability to detect deceptive behavior. Their methods soon showed promising results in fraud investigations nationwide. Elena watched with pride as her granddaughter embraced these new opportunities to help others. Sophie's experiences had given her a unique perspective on healing and justice, which she now shared through motivational speeches at schools and youth organizations. Her message emphasized how personal challenges could become stepping stones to helping others. The impact of their case extended into legal education as well. Law schools added modules about service dog evidence to their curriculum, using Sophie and Shadow's story as a case study. Judge Montgomery was frequently invited to speak about her groundbreaking ruling on the admissibility of trained service dog alerts in court proceedings. Victoria Blackwood developed a comprehensive security protocol for community centers, incorporating lessons learned from Sophie and Shadow's experience. The program included training staff to work with service dogs and establishing verification systems for guest speakers and program providers. Centers nationwide adopted these measures, creating safer spaces for vulnerable populations. Sophie's advocacy work expanded beyond fraud prevention. She began working with children who had experienced trauma, showing them how partnerships with service dogs could aid in recovery. Shadow's gentle presence helped these children feel safe enough to share their stories, just as he had once helped Sophie find her voice. The Shadow Center quickly became a hub for innovative service dog training. Marcus's program grew to include specialized tracks for different types of service work, always emphasizing the importance of the bond between handler and dog. Sophie and Shadow often participated in training sessions, demonstrating the extraordinary possibilities that could emerge from trust and dedication. International recognition came when a prestigious children's rights organization honored Sophie and Shadow with their annual Courage Award. The ceremony, attended by advocates from around the world, celebrated how their partnership had created new ways to protect vulnerable children. Sophie's acceptance speech, delivered with Shadow by her side, moved many to tears as she described their journey from trauma to triumph. Research universities began studying the unique aspects of Shadow's deception detection abilities. Scientists discovered that his accuracy in identifying fraudulent behavior was linked to subtle changes in human physiology that dogs could detect. This research led to new understanding of how service dogs could be trained to recognize and respond to various human conditions. Elena found herself becoming an advocate for service dog programs, sharing their family's story at fundraising events and policy meetings. She described how Shadow had not only helped Sophie heal, but had given her a purpose that transformed their entire community. Her passionate speeches often inspired substantial donations to support service dog training programs. The Millbrook Heights School District implemented a new program, bringing service dogs into classrooms to help students dealing with anxiety and trauma. Sophie and Shadow visited these classes regularly, showing students how trust and partnership could overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges. Their presence helped create supportive environments where healing could flourish. Detective Morgan's department established a specialized unit focusing on crimes against vulnerable populations, with service dogs playing a key role in investigations. The unit's success rate in detecting and preventing fraud schemes proved the value of incorporating trained dogs into protective services. Their methods became a model for other law enforcement agencies. The Shadow Center's training program expanded to include international students, creating a global network of service dog teams trained in deception detection. These partnerships went on to prevent countless fraud schemes in their home countries, spreading the ripple effect of Sophie and Shadow's work around the world. Professional organizations began recognizing the unique contributions of service dogs to various fields. The American Bar Association created guidelines for incorporating service dog evidence in legal proceedings, while medical associations studied how dogs like Shadow could assist in therapeutic settings. Their story had sparked a revolution in how society viewed the capabilities of service animals. Sophie's experiences inspired her to start writing about her journey with Shadow. Her first book, written for young readers, told their story in a way that helped other children understand the healing power of animal partnerships. The book became required reading in many schools' character education programs. Marcus developed new training techniques based on his observations of Sophie and Shadow's partnership. He discovered that allowing handlers and dogs to develop their own communication styles often led to stronger bonds and more effective working relationships. This insight revolutionized how service dog teams were trained. The impact of their case continued to grow as more fraud prevention programs incorporated service dogs into their security measures. Banks, healthcare facilities, and social service organizations began working with trained dogs to help identify potential scams. Shadow's legacy had created a new field of service dog work focused on protecting vulnerable populations. Their stories' influence reached unexpected places. Artists created children's books and educational materials featuring their partnership, while researchers studied their unique bond to better understand human-animal relationships. Sophie and Shadow had become symbols of hope, showing how adversity could lead to extraordinary purpose. As their influence grew, Sophie remained grounded in her original mission of helping others heal. She never forgot how Shadow had helped her find strength in her darkest moments, and she dedicated herself to sharing that possibility with others. Their partnership continued to evolve, finding new ways to serve their community and inspire others to overcome their own challenges. Their journey had shown that true healing often leads to unexpected destinations, and that the strongest partnerships are those forged in service to others. Sophie and Shadow had transformed personal tragedy into a force for positive change, proving that courage and compassion could light the way forward for countless others seeking their own paths to recovery and purpose. As Sophie entered her teenage years, her partnership with Shadow continued to evolve in remarkable ways. The Shadow Center had become a nationally recognized institution for innovative service dog training, but Sophie's personal growth was perhaps the most inspiring aspect of their ongoing story. No longer defined by her past trauma, she had become a confident young advocate for justice and healing, with Shadow remaining her steadfast companion through every new challenge. Their latest initiative involved developing a peer support program for children testifying in court cases. Sophie understood firsthand the anxiety of facing legal proceedings, and she worked with Marcus to create a system where service dogs could help young witnesses feel safe and supported. The program, called Shadows of Courage, quickly gained attention from family courts across the country. One particular case demonstrated the profound impact of their work. A 12-year-old girl named Maya, who had witnessed a serious crime, was struggling with severe anxiety about testifying. Traditional support methods had failed to help her feel secure enough to share her story. When Sophie and Shadow began working with Maya, something extraordinary happened. Shadow seemed to understand instinctively what Maya needed. During their sessions, he would position himself slightly differently than he did with other children, creating a protective space that helped Maya feel safe enough to speak. Sophie recognized in Maya's hesitation echoes of her own past struggles, and she shared with the young girl how Shadow had helped her find her voice. The transformation in Maya was remarkable. Within weeks, she had progressed from being unable to speak about her experiences to practicing her testimony with growing confidence. Shadow's presence provided the security she needed, while Sophie's guidance helped her understand that her voice mattered. Their success with Maya led to the program being implemented in courts nationwide. Elena watched with pride as her granddaughter continued to grow into her role as a mentor and advocate. The frightened child, who had once needed Shadow's support to leave the house, was now helping others find their own strength. Together, Sophie and Shadow had created something powerful, a way for trauma to transform into purpose. The Shadow Center expanded its programs to include specialized training for therapy dogs working in courtrooms. Marcus incorporated lessons learned from Sophie and Shadow's experiences, teaching handlers how to help their dogs provide emotional support while maintaining appropriate courtroom behavior. Their methods became the standard for legal support. Dog programs across the country. Research universities continued studying the unique aspects of service dog support in legal settings. Dr. Rebecca Chen's latest study showed that children working with trained dogs like Shadow showed significantly lower stress levels during testimony, leading to more accurate and detailed accounts. The findings helped establish scientific validation for what Sophie and Shadow had discovered through experience. Detective Morgan's specialized unit achieved unprecedented success rates in cases involving vulnerable witnesses. The integration of service dogs into their investigative process based on Sophie and Shadow's model had created new ways to help victims feel safe enough to share crucial information. Their methods were being adopted by law enforcement agencies worldwide. The Millbrook Heights courthouse, once just another government building, had become a pioneer in making legal proceedings more accessible to traumatized witnesses. Judge Montgomery worked with Sophie to design child-friendly waiting areas where service dogs could help young witnesses prepare for testimony. The initiative sparked similar changes in courthouses across the country. Victoria Blackwood's Community Center program had evolved into a comprehensive support system for families navigating legal challenges. The center now offered specially designed spaces where children could work with service dogs to build confidence before court appearances. Sophie and Shadow regularly visited these sessions, inspiring others with their story of transformation. Sophie's peer support work revealed new dimensions of Shadow's capabilities. The shepherd showed an uncanny ability to adapt his support style to each child's specific needs. Some required his protective presence, others responded to his playful side, and still others found comfort in his calm, steady demeanor. His versatility helped Sophie understand how to better serve different types of trauma survivors. The impact of their work extended beyond the legal system. Schools began implementing similar support dog programs for students dealing with anxiety or trauma. Sophie worked with educational specialists to develop guidelines for incorporating service dogs into academic environments, creating safer spaces for vulnerable students to learn and grow. Their influence reached international levels when Sophie was invited to speak at a global conference on children's rights. Her presentation, focusing on innovative ways to support young witnesses, captured the attention of legal and child welfare professionals from around the world. Shadow's presence during her speech demonstrated the powerful bond that had made their work possible. Elena's role evolved as well. She began working with other grandparents, raising traumatized children, sharing her experiences and the lessons she had learned through Sophie and Shadow's journey. Her guidance helped many families understand how service dog partnerships could support healing across generations. The Shadow Center's training program continued to break new ground. Marcus developed specialized courses for dogs working with different types of trauma, always emphasizing the importance of the individual bond between handler and dog. Sophie and Shadow's partnership remained the model for how these relationships could grow and adapt to meet new challenges. Their story inspired artistic expressions that helped spread their message in new ways. A documentary filmmaker captured their work with young witnesses, creating a powerful testament to the healing potential of human-animal partnerships. The film helped others understand the sophisticated ways service dogs could support trauma recovery. Sophie's own healing journey continued to inform her work. She understood that recovery wasn't a destination, but an ongoing process of growth and discovery. Shadow remained her constant companion through every new challenge, their bond deepening as they found new ways to help others find their voice. The legal community's acceptance of service dog support continued to grow. Law schools invited Sophie to speak about her experiences, helping future attorneys understand how to better serve vulnerable clients. Shadow's presence during these presentations demonstrated the profound impact service dogs could have in legal settings. As their influence expanded, Sophie remained focused on the individual stories of transformation. Each child they helped represented a unique journey of healing and discovery. Shadow's intuitive ability to connect with these young survivors showed how deep the understanding between humans and animals could become. Their work began to influence policy decisions at the highest levels. Government agencies consulted with Sophie about implementing service dog support programs in various institutional settings. Her experiences helped shape regulations that would make these services more accessible to those who needed them most. The ripple effects of their partnership continued to spread in unexpected ways. Other service dog teams, inspired by their story, found new ways to serve their communities. Sophie and Shadow had shown that the possibilities for healing partnerships were limited only by imagination and dedication. Looking back on their journey, Sophie understood that their greatest achievement wasn't in the programs they'd created or the policies they'd influenced, but in the individual lives they'd touched. Each person who found their voice, each family that discovered hope, represented the true legacy of their partnership. As they continued their work, Sophie and Shadow remained grounded in the simple truth that had started their journey, that healing is possible when we find the courage to trust and the strength to help others. Their story had become more than just an example of recovery. It was a beacon of hope, showing how personal transformation could lead to lasting positive change. The legacy of Sophie and Shadow's extraordinary partnership took on new dimensions as their influence continued to grow. 10 years after that pivotal moment in Courtroom 7, their impact had transformed not just individual lives, but entire systems of justice and healing. The Shadow Center had become an internationally renowned institution, training service dog teams that worked in courtrooms, schools, and trauma centers around the world. Sophie, now a poised young adult pursuing her law degree, still worked closely with Shadow, though his muzzle had grayed and his pace had slowed slightly with age. Their bond had only deepened with time, evolving to meet new challenges while maintaining the extraordinary connection that had first helped them expose Whitman's scheme. Their latest initiative focused on creating a global network of trauma-informed legal services, incorporating service dog support. The program, called Guardians of Truth, connected legal professionals with specially trained service dog teams to help vulnerable witnesses find their voice. The success rates of these partnerships in helping witnesses testify effectively had caught the attention of justice systems worldwide. One particularly moving case involved a young survivor of human trafficking who had been unable to speak about her experiences until working with a service dog team trained through Sophie and Shadow's program. The girl's testimony eventually led to the dismantling of an international trafficking network, demonstrating how the ripple effects of Sophie and Shadow's work continued to grow in unexpected ways. Eleanor had published a memoir about their journey, titled Shadows of Hope, which became a bestseller and was being adapted into a feature film. The book captured not just their story, but the broader impact of their partnership on the justice system and trauma recovery. Hollywood producers were determined to portray the deep bond between Sophie and Shadow authentically, consulting closely with them throughout the production process. Marcus had expanded the Shadow Center's programs to include specialized training for dogs working with different types of trauma survivors. The center's research department, collaborating with leading universities, continued to discover new ways that service dogs could support healing and justice. Their findings were revolutionizing understanding of the human-animal bond and its potential applications. Detective Morgan, now heading a national task force on crimes against vulnerable populations, had implemented Sophie and Shadow's methods across multiple jurisdictions. The success of these programs in helping witnesses feel safe enough to testify had led to unprecedented conviction rates in cases involving traumatized survivors. Judge Montgomery, though retired from the bench, remained active in promoting the integration of service dogs into legal proceedings. Her groundbreaking ruling on Shadow's courtroom role had evolved into comprehensive guidelines adopted by court systems around the world. She often spoke about how one remarkable partnership had transformed the landscape of justice. Victoria. Blackwood's community center model had been replicated in cities across the globe, creating safe spaces where service dogs helped trauma survivors rebuild their lives. The centers offered comprehensive support services, including legal advocacy, therapy, and educational programs, all incorporating the lessons learned from Sophie and Shadow's journey. The Shadow Center's training facility had become a living laboratory for understanding the potential of human-animal partnerships. Research teams studied how dogs like Shadow could detect deception, provide emotional support, and help create safe spaces for healing. Their findings continued to expand the possibilities for service dog work in new and unexpected directions. Sophie's work with young witnesses had led to the development of specialized protocols for child testimony. Courts nationwide had adopted these procedures, which integrated service dog support into every aspect of the legal process. The success of these programs in helping children share their stories effectively had dramatically improved outcomes. In cases involving young witnesses, Dr. Rebecca Chen's ongoing research had revealed fascinating insights into how service dogs could help trauma survivors process and share their experiences. Her studies showed that the presence of trained dogs like Shadow actually changed brain activity patterns in ways that supported healing and reduced anxiety during testimony. The Millbrook Heights courthouse had become a model for trauma-informed justice, with dedicated spaces where service dogs helped witnesses prepare for testimony. The building's transformation reflected broader changes in how the legal system approached trauma, changes that had begun with Sophie and Shadow's partnership. International recognition came in the form of a prestigious humanitarian award, celebrating how their work had created new pathways for healing and justice. The ceremony, attended by leaders from around the world, highlighted how one remarkable partnership had sparked a global movement to make justice more accessible to trauma survivors. Sophie's law school thesis, examining the role of service dogs in legal proceedings, had become required reading at law schools nationwide. Her unique perspective as both a survivor and advocate helped future lawyers understand how to better serve vulnerable clients. Shadow still accompanied her to guest lectures, their partnership continuing to inspire new generations of legal professionals. The film adaptation of their story premiered at a star-studded event, but the real stars were the service dog teams who had followed in Sophie and Shadow's footsteps. The red carpet was filled with handlers and their dogs, each partnership representing a unique story of healing and hope, inspired by that first remarkable connection. Through it all, Sophie and Shadow remained grounded in their original mission of helping others find their voice. They continued to work directly with trauma survivors, understanding that each individual story of healing contributed to the larger narrative of transformation they had helped create. Their legacy lived on in countless ways, in the courts that had become more accessible to trauma survivors, in the service dog teams working around the world, and in the lives of individuals who had found their own path to healing through similar partnerships. Sophie and Shadow had shown that the bonds between humans and animals could transform not just individual lives, but entire systems of justice. As they marked the 10th anniversary of their first courtroom appearance, Sophie reflected on their journey. What had begun as a partnership for personal healing had grown into a movement that continued to create positive change around the world. Their story had become a testament to the transformative power of trust, courage, and unwavering loyalty. Shadow, though older now, still responded to Sophie's subtle hand signals with the same dedication that had once helped expose a criminal enterprise. Their bond had evolved, but remained as strong as ever, proving that the deepest partnerships only grow stronger with time and purpose. The future held new challenges and opportunities, but Sophie and Shadow faced them together, just as they always. And their legacy would continue to inspire others to find their own paths to healing and justice, showing that even the darkest experiences could lead to light when guided by courage, compassion, and the extraordinary bond between a girl and her service dog. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.